Thanks everybody for joining us. I'm Michelle Franco, Assistant Professor in Landscape Architecture here at Knowlton, and I'm so happy to introduce tonight's lecture from Knowlton Landscape's Glimcher Distinguished Professors, TERREMOTO. And tonight, TERREMOTO, a shifting collective of landscape designers based out of Los Angeles and San Francisco, are represented by David Godshall, one of the firm's two co-founders, the other being Alan Paroy, who recently passed just last week. So on behalf of Knowlton, I would like to extend our support for the firm and for everyone whose lives Alan touched. Thank you, David, for being with us here today. During this intense period of personal and collective grief, David's joining us from Los Angeles, where disaster is unfolding. Wildfires are uprooting and upheaving the social fabric, and that's for now and for the foreseeable future. Strangely enough, this difficult moment may be the perfect time to learn from TERREMOTO. The firm has an explicit ethos of locking horns with big, difficult parts of existence. And in this way, they tap into the zeitgeist of our students' generation, the refusal to accept complicity, the motivation to critique old standards, and the enthusiasm to awaken. So it makes sense that when I first learned of TERREMOTO's work, that lesson came from a student. We were searching for representations of labor from landscape architecture practices. And we found only one firm who were actively picturing laborers, physical work, and projects under construction. And not just picturing it, but celebrating. And that firm was TERREMOTO. So this kindled a kinship between us, and we've been working in tandem on the project to, in their words, respect and honor the laborer by making their contributions present, clear, and explicitly visible. So this is challenging and necessary work, and as I've noted before, absolutely should be part of the site of design. Likewise, TERREMOTO, in their self-aware and self-reflective way, bring conversations about indigeneity and land-back movements, entrenched yet unsustainable building practices, and handed-down conventions of authority in design practice into the privileged space of landscape architecture work. None of these efforts are static proclamations, though. Rather, they're working questions with ever-evolving responses. And all the while, TERREMOTO makes stunning, beautiful gardens that resonate to the core of our discipline, that bring us back to our roots. While they've created gardens for Sea Ranch Lodge, the Laguna Canyon Foundation, and the Getty Museum, as well as public, volunteer-driven test plots, most of their work to date unfolds in private residences throughout California. Not only are TERREMOTO gardens sensory magic, poetic reflections on place, time, and materials, but their work reminds us that in these sites, the gardens of elites, we may find the perfect place to examine politics, power, and our own role as designers in situated, entangled worlds. So I'm thrilled to work with TERREMOTO as the Glimcher Distinguished Professors in spring and summer of this year. You'll see various members of the group here at Knowlton over the next few months, as we're working with Knowlton Landscape students to expand the firm's manifesto of radical gardens of love and interconnectedness. And we're testing this experimental approach to garden making through maintenance and care at the Columbus Museum of Art at the Pizzuti. So I hope you'll join us on that journey. You can see student work from this endeavor at the Banvard Gallery in the spring, as well as visiting the Pizzuti, of course, in the spring, or in the summer, fall, and onward. For now, please join me in a warm welcome for my colleague, collaborator, and friend, David Godshall.
Thank you, Michelle. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. I guess as a start, I would like to say thank you and thank Knowlton. Myself and my business partners and team are incredibly honored and excited for the Glimcher and the road ahead. And I mean, based on yesterday with your students, it's going to be an incredible semester, and we're also so thankful for the Pizzuti as well. It's going to be a incredible journey, taking a lot of like the principles and ethics and ways of working that we've tinkered with, mostly in California, and then applying those to a very different region and community and place. And I'm of the belief that, I'll be mean to architecture for 1 second, but I'm of the belief that institutions can best and most elegantly like adapt to a changing world actually through the landscape. Landscape is a medium that's inevitably like less fixed than architecture. So I think at the Pizzuti we have this incredible opportunity to kind of redefine the institution and also like create a place that is meaningful and useful to many. So it's going to be awesome. And also everyone's just been really kind and nice to me here. So I wanted to just say thank you for that. I'm going to go fast so that we have a little bit of time at the end for questions. We've titled this lecture Creative Demolition, Modest Interventions. It's kind of like a simple catch-all. We're increasingly trying to not do demolition. Casey, who's the designer at our Los Angeles office, recently stated that he wants to not do demolition plans in our construction documents. He wants to do anti-demolition plans. So I'll kind of get into that as I talk about our built work. And modest interventions. I believe that our society and culture undervalues modesty, and we are increasingly trying to incorporate small, modest, thoughtful interventions into our work as a way of working. I want to be explicit. I need to be explicit about the fact that we are a team. I'll give you a brief soundbite just so you understand like the nature of the office. It's a team of 26 people split between Los Angeles and San Francisco. LA is a little bit bigger. It's like 14, 15, whereas we're closer to 10 or 11 in San Francisco. And the offices in the day-to-day operate autonomously and independently because it just makes sense for us to tend to the projects that are close by. But we operate under a shared philosophical umbrella. I will also say that the design of the office and the structure of the office and the power structure or lack thereof is also like perhaps is very much a designed and intentional thing. I'll kind of keep going now, but later in the lecture I'll come back to why and how we make our office different. And I need to talk about Alan because he was my friend and business partner, and how was your January, right? My God. Anyways, after a long 10-year private and brave battle with cancer, my friend and business partner Alan passed away last week. Michelle was kind enough to give me an out, but I took her up on, I said no, I rejected her out. Because I wanted to be here because Alan was many things, but he was also a worker and he loved what he did. And if I had passed away, he would have gone to work the next day, I have no doubt. But he found meaning and beauty in his work. So you're catching me at a slightly raw, ragged moment, but I promise the lecture will go in somewhere positive and uplifting. But Alan was an incredible builder, and he taught 26 people how to build. And I would say that his love of, he once said to me, let the material define the detail, not vice versa. And that always stuck with me. And I feel like so much of our simplicity and trying to make details and landscapes that are very elemental and don't try to overly impose or require compliance of materials and in a way kind of honoring them is very much his legacy. Also his kindness to builders. When we started the office in the early days, he and I found it strange that in previous work experiences there was an adversarial sort of a nature between the landscape architect and the builder, and he and I wanted to start anew. And so through becoming allies and advocates for laborers, that kind of later emerged as our land and labor. So that's him because he was a sweetheart. Anyways, I felt it would be disingenuous of me not to talk about him. So this is him and I at our office holiday party. Story took the picture. She had obviously been drinking, but that's fine. It's a holiday party. That's what you do. So I'm going to really quickly talk about like the early days and the origin to get us to the present. In the early days, we formed the office because we wanted to make and design gardens that were expressions of ideas, inquiries into material, and really like microcosms of like culture. So to the point that Michelle made, most of our work it just became gardens on single-family homes. We needed money, we were poor, and so we just needed to get to the next project, and so we built gardens, and we loved construction, and we love construction. So we built lots of projects and explored ideas and made mistakes, and it was great. This is an early project. This is very much Alan's work. This is a project out in Healdsburg, deep northern California, and these are Arbutus menziesii, which is a very special madrone tree that has a very, I adore these trees because they have a very idiosyncratic personal relationship with mycorrhizal fungal systems, and so you can't really landscape with them. They only exist in like kind of their native habitats, and I respect plants that won't let you landscape with them. I think that's very cool. So this was a grove of arbutus trees, and what we did is, in making these wood boardwalk paths, we prioritized kindness. So what we did is we gave ourselves rules, and anytime we encountered a root that was over 3 inches in diameter, then the path would have to move. So like simple, like experimental kind of things like that guided our early work. This is not a TERREMOTO project. And this, like, to get us to the present day, Los Angeles is literally on fire. There's another fire today. But I show this image almost more like rhetorically or metaphorically in that a lot has happened in the last 12 years since we started the office. And it sometimes feels like our world is on fire, because it actually is. But also technology, politics, all these things. It has been an interesting time to create and grow a young office. And with the urgency of this moment, we're asking ourselves as an office some pretty basic questions about why we garden, or why make a garden, or how do we make a garden, and kind of asking ourselves like deep kind of philosophical but also really dumb questions that hopefully allow us to evolve as a practice. There's somebody here. Anyways. Who was it? Sorry, I'm skipping ahead. Hold on, I'm having trouble with the... So this is a mostly intact picture of a mostly intact coastal sage chaparral ecosystem. So this is what most of Southern California would have looked like prior to colonization, essentially, and urbanization. I'm having trouble with the... and then what we did is we superimposed our city onto a world that had natural systems and natural patterns, and we built a city that was very irreverent and unkind to those patterns and systems. And then we built homes. I basically grew up in a house that looks like the one on the left. But then we built our homes with a lot of toxic materials and bad things. And then we built gardens around these homes that, I'm being mean to my region for a second. I'll be nice in a minute. And then we built gardens that served no purpose other than to be visually pleasing, but that also required ongoing external material and resource input ongoingly, because I would offer that if you're going to build a garden like the one on the right, it's going to need water. We steal our water and pump it over a mountain and then bring it back to our land, and then we use it to water grass that's of no use to anybody. This seems like madness, like the more that we think about it. So I guess we're starting to ask ourselves, like, might there be another way? And we ask ourselves, why, how, and for whom is the garden? I'll start with a definition. This definition is always changing, but presently it's that a garden is a human-led curation of materials and plants built and maintained with labor on the medium of land. Time is missing there. Time should be part of that sentence, but time makes it complicated. So with that, land, materials, labor, plants, as an office, we are presently being self-critical and analytical and asking ourselves about the nature of our relationships to the tools with which we create land, materials, labor, and plants. The idea being that if we can make sure that our relationship to our kit of parts or our ingredients with which we cook, if we can make sure that our relationships are positive or omnipositive, then the garden will inevitably be awesome. So I'm going to start with land, and then what I'll do is I'm going to run through projects that kind of show how we think about a more gentle and thoughtful way of working. Read and listen to the land, indigenous land acknowledgement and action, minimizing disruption and imposition, and keep it light, doing right by the site. These are some of our more action-oriented ways of thinking. So this is Laguna Canyon Foundation. This was a project I should credit Jenny Jones and Danny Von Lay of our office were the primary people who worked on it. The Laguna Canyon Foundation is a nonprofit that basically protects remaining wild lands in Southern California from further development. So they're environmental advocates, basically. They hired us because they had a headquarters, but their headquarters actually was never meaningfully landscaped, or it did not embody or represent the ethics and values of the organization itself. So they hired us. This is a finished image, I should qualify that. So I'm going to make a brief land acknowledgement. TERREMOTO recognizes and acknowledges the Tongva, Kizh, Fernandeño, Tataviam, Chumash, Ahachiman, Serrano, Pomo, Wapo, Kosmiwak, and Ohlone peoples as the original inhabitants and stewards of the land on which we now live and work in California. Interestingly, is that we are on stolen land. That is not a situation that we can snap our fingers and rectify. But as landscape architects, we work close to land, and so as an office, we're trying to be thoughtful and action-oriented about how we incorporate land acknowledgement into our work. We usually give this sort of a thing in our schematic design presentation, but we're always tinkering with it because we never want it to feel like an obstacle or a rote. It wants to be a thing that oftentimes what we realize is that pairing this page with planting is actually has a bit of elegance to it in that we mostly use native plants, and native plants are meant to be where they are in the world and then provide habitat to animals and plants. So in this project, we started by studying the land. The Angeles Forest, we did a quick survey of other intact ecosystems nearby. The gray that you see here is all urbanized, basically. That's the endless ocean of suburbia that Southern California is. And then we zoom in. This is pretty standard fare landscape architecture 101, but we zoom in to try and start to understand the minutia, the water flows, the circulation flows of how the site works. So to my earlier point about trying to be kind to land or quietly making the land our client, this is how we get into that mindset. Studying topography, ridges, hillside zones, the valley floor. So this property had been through a lot of trauma insofar as it was historically a walnut orchard, and then it was a equestrian farm basically for many years, and invasive species, as agriculture and equestrian sort of activities do, invasive species come along and they run amok, and then time passes and it was a neglected landscape. There had also been a former dump that you see up here at the top. And about 15 years ago, in a 100-year storm, that dump actually let a huge amount of soil that kind of washed out houses down the road. So the land had been through a lot. This is what the site looked like upon our arrival. That shed that you see there was later replaced by those structures you saw in the first image. But mostly what you see here is invasive species kind of run amok with some existing coastal sage chaparral in the ecosystem. I should say that the grading of the site as we came to it was not ideal. We made the decision not to massively regrade the site, both from a financial point of view, but also as we started to examine the drainage systems, the civil engineer kind of came up with this very heavy, I shouldn't be mean to the civil engineer, he was just doing his job, but the solution that they had for the drainage was essentially would have required pouring a lot of concrete and neglecting or not being observant of the natural flows of the water. We made a decision to actually pursue a soft kind of engineering solution, and we saved that carbon. And it's an interesting method of working because when you choose to actually proactively not choose the more type A heavy construction point of view, what you risk is actually small failures. So what we had to let our client know was that through not choosing the hard engineering solution, that there may be little mudslides and things like that. In this case, our client signed up for that. We saved the budget and the project moved forward. In all projects, we do a lot of walking and looking and listening. It could take a lifetime to truly know a place, right? But we do our best in a short amount of time to listen to the land and come to understand it as best we can. And we very much did this. Studied geology, studied the natural expression of the horticulture, and to be gentle. And this is a soft bottom creek. This is one of the remaining intact soft bottom creeks in all of Orange County. So of course, doing right by this creek was of great importance to us. This kind of speaks to the fact that we inherited, you see those kind of chasms or those cliffs on that side. So we did a section, we kind of studied it, we came up with our soft engineering solution and opted for something much softer. I should also say that we do our best with land. We try not to wholly erase the existing conditions on a site upon our arrival. Doing that is usually carbon heavy. It creates historical amnesia when we're just erasing what was there before. And that's kind of what colonizing species do, and that totally sucks. So we're trying not to do that anymore. So with that, this is a long rambling way of describing that we actually, though that fence was a remnant of the era of this site being used as an equestrian zone, we kept signifiers so that a person might kind of passively and quietly come to understand the uses of the site that had been historically had. So kind of decisions like this, where and when to get rid of stuff, and where, though the presence of this gate through one lens might be a painful history to a person, it's important to not erase those things lest we make the same mistake over and over again. And you should see all of this is Funiculum vulgare, which is invasive mustard. So of course, getting rid of the invasive species is a thing that we will do. This is Jenny talking to our client, and this is a sea of ice plant, which is also an invasive species. But then an intact riparian corridor. So again, it's about coming to the site, observing it, understanding doing our best to come to understand what things are good and what things are bad, and then demolishing as little as is required to give the land a new future. This is our site plan. And then we got into construction. So we started through building paths. It's a very natural kind of ecological project in a way. It doesn't feel highly designed. This is Carmen Orozco, who is basically my uncle at this point. He's been building landscapes for us for the past 12 years, and he's an incredible human being. I'll kind of come back to him in our land and labor discussion, but in this instance, we find that we don't like drawing plans for things that are better designed in site with the worker. So trails, for example, are maybe our favorite thing to build, and that is an exercise that is best done on the site. a plan is inevitably an abstraction and won't be able to acknowledge like where there might be Artemisia californica. So we wanted to limit the demolition of intact coastal stage chaparral, so Jenny and Danny with Carmen kind of did that on site. And again, we kept our moves very elemental, and this is a construction photo. These are some of the motos doing pathwork. We kind of went down as an office, and when that's appropriate and possible in projects, we will do a certain amount of the construction ourselves as well. In this instance, we were taking debris from trees, from the willows nearby, and using those to layer paths, or to line the edges of paths. And this is it as it kind of came together and grows in. This wood that you see is from Angel City Lumber. I'll talk about materials more in the next thing, but when able, we try to use materials that are as hyperlocal as possible for both environmental, sustainability, and actually, like, strangely, economic reasons, but I'll get into that in a second. And this is it as it came in. So though this hill was like much steeper and more of a chasm than we'd like it to be, we left it intact and then instead planted soil stabilizing hillside erosion planting, essentially. And now it grows in. So the next project, materials. Okay, with materials, we believe in keeping things hyperlocal. We believe in making new things out of old things and wasting as little as possible. And that's my reminder to discuss the economic and community resiliency that this creates. This is a project that we worked on in Denver. I should start my description of this project by at least saying that we took this project skeptically. We took this project skeptically because we don't necessarily think that landscape architects should be working everywhere. There's a funny thing in our profession where as you gain notoriety or the office gets a reputation of, as that grows, that then people ask you to work far away. I say that knowing that we're working on the Pizzuti here, so I'm a hypocrite, but allow me to explain. So the tendency to just like start building things elsewhere, I feel like there's danger in that, because when you work far away from a place that you intimately know, you'll understand less what's going on socially, ecologically, all these sorts of things. So when this project came in, we kind of had that hesitation, but it came in through a side door. We had worked for the client before, we had a lovely working relationship, and we expressed to them like our reticence to actually take our project on somewhere in Denver, which we didn't intimately know. Allow me to explain what we did that I think, I acknowledge there's hubris in this statement, but we did certain hacks almost that allowed us to generate what I think is a successful project. So, regionally specific, botanically significant, natural sculpture and materiality. We wanted to carve a plaza into a native landscape. So the landscape would come first, and then we would carve the plaza into it. This is, and I should say, Casey Toomey and Danny Von Lay were the primary people that worked on this project. This is the project as it goes in. And what we did in this project is we used, all materials were sourced from within 100-ish miles of the site. So we just, doing that just like inherently embedded it with a vernacular that felt local to the place that it finds itself. And then what we also did is we consulted with a local horticultural consultant. So Kevin Williams is this incredible designer at the Denver Botanical Garden, and he helped us figure out our planting palette and guide us to create a planting plan that would be appropriate for this region and also provide usefulness to the creatures with whom we share Denver. So we started through, kind of to my earlier point, walking in, looking and trying to understand things. Again, it can take a lifetime to come to know a place, but we did our best in a comparatively short amount of time. This is our planting plan that we worked out with Kevin Williams. And then just studying the natural flows of things. These paths are just, not designed, but these are they're almost emergent desire lines from people hiking into this natural area. But almost the pink hue to define like dust and decomposed granite, like that are these natural paths, then very much came back into our work. This is Casey. Casey's so smart. What he did is he found a boulder with a soft depression, and he put this boulder, I'll show it to you later, in a perfect spot where when the irrigation goes on, it fills up with a certain amount of water. Then that water is useful to bees and birds during the day, but then it dries out when it gets hot. Studying the geology, taking all that in. Oh, I should talk about the local materials. So an interesting thing is that our choice or decision to try and use materials that were as local to the site as possible and originally came from like an environmental point of view. It seemed to make good sense to us that well, I guess we transport everything mostly on trucks. Trucks use gas. Gas creates pollution. So through using local materials, we are reducing the amount of pollution essentially, and or carbon that is released into the atmosphere. Also, interestingly, in making this decision, these are like welcome unforeseen things or tributaries that have emerged since making that decision. There's actually like a land and labor aspect to it as well, because when we work locally, we get to know the people who run this stone yard. This is a female-owned, family-owned stone yard just outside of Denver. We see how they treat their people. We can understand that their way of doing work and how they do their business. That's Casey right there. Also, interestingly, is doing this creates like local economic resiliency. We, like in LA, for example, I know the wood guy. His name is Jeff. He's my friend now. But during COVID, when a lot of like larger projects got tied up because the fragility of our like global shipping system like was kind of ruined by COVID, our business mostly kind of continued to go along and everything was okay because of all the materials that we're sourcing were just a few miles away. So there's interestingly like a economic resilience and social resilience to working in this way. So increasingly we're trying to draw our boundaries to get materials that are closer and closer and closer to the job site as possible. This is the crew getting the boulders into place. It was an awesome crew. And this is it as it comes together. There it is. That's Casey's boulder with a soft depression. And now it's become a very loved, we've met a lot of people who actually come to lunch almost daily to this landscape. And it is of use to both humans and other creatures as well. Labor. I'll start with test plot and then I'll kind of lead that into our land and labor discussion. Test plot is a project, I should say, Elysian Park is a park, a large public park near Echo Park, which our office was formerly located at. Pardon me, now we're about 10 minutes away. It is a loved, cherished public open space that is in an ecologically disastrous way. It's essentially, through human tinkering, we destroyed it. We used it as pasture lands, and then we planted eucalyptus, which are now like basically half dead. And the ground plane is dominated by invasive grasses that are a remnant of this agricultural past. We approached the park, the RAP, Recreation and Parks, and we asked them if we could, or what their plan was ecologically speaking, and they informed us that they have no plan. It's not their fault. They are a woefully underfunded, I'm going to trash talk my city, but that's okay, it's my city. RAP is a woefully underfunded bureaucracy that can barely keep up with like trash and that sort of a thing. A longer conversation about the political nature of Los Angeles, but I'll just keep going. So we asked them if we could have permission to essentially start gardening on their land. They were very skeptical because it is a slippery slope if cities were to just allow like everybody to start gardening on public open space. They gave us permission as long as we agreed that it was temporary. So we said, of course, we'll call it whatever we want. Whatever you need us to say, we will say so that we can do this thing. So what we did is we found a hose bib, so we found water, and then we did some tests, and when you tie on a sprinkler to the end of a hose, it creates a certain throw, and that in turn informed like the diameter of our site. So that's what you get here. What we did is we kind of studied the situation as best we could in its totality, and what's going on the ground plane is that there probably are remnant strands of like native species, but they're simply outcompeted by these invasive grasses. So what happens is these invasive grasses grow, they use all the water and then choke out the sunlight for any native plants that like might be in their understory. And then they go to seed, and then and then the cycle continues. So what we did here is we tried to like interrupt this cycle, and so this we watered to get the weeds to come out of the ground, but then we would cut them down before they actually went to flower. So we're actually, before they went to seed. So we're trying to like interrupt this like cycle of nastiness in a way. And this is us, I think that's Tim Switzer, making these paths. And now they're growing in and becoming more and more of a thing. I should say that after this first test plot, Jenny taught a studio with an incredible landscape architect named Jen Toy at USC, and they actually did a test plot for this design studio. Jen Toy later came to us and asked us if she could take test plot and run with it, and we said, take it, we're a busy office, and so she's now developed it into a nonprofit, and there's 12 test plots across California, and it's this incredible mission. What's interesting is that from test plot to test plot, they look totally different, and that's because every place is different. The water sources are different. Sometimes we're on hills, sometimes we're low, and also the community is different. What was interesting to us also is that what started out again as this ecological project has later emerged as like this community project, because what ends up happening is neighbors get involved, and so then what test plot has like a half hand in it, and then the community actually lets it to continue and grow. This one is in Northern California, and they're trying to do a test plot at the base, at the understory of eucalyptus trees. Eucalyptus trees are allelopathic, which means their leaf litter changes the pH at the base of their tree, and that's a really good characteristic when you're a mean invasive species like eucalyptus. But because there's stands of eucalyptus across all of California, we're trying to figure out ways of doing native gardening in the understory of these habitats. Again, it's kind of like assessing the situation and figuring out a way of working. And this is a test plot at USC. And there's Jenny telling everybody what to do. And now what we're doing is we're harvesting seed from the plants that we've grown on site. We've done our best to keep the planting to the local watershed we're doing our best to use plants that whose genetics match like the local watershed that we're working in. That's kind of impossible, but we're doing our best. But now what we're also doing is we're collecting seed from the plants we grow so that we can continue, and it might be financially less burdensome. We're also experimenting with scything. So there's, my point of that cycle of weed whacking and, let me go back one. Oh no, hold on. The mouse is being very funny. I'm almost there, sorry. So we're also experimenting with scything. Right now, that's the image that you see on the left. I believe that's Jenny. So what ends up happening in these public open spaces is that they let the weeds emerge, and then they hire a crew of people to come through and just weed whack everything after the seeds have gone to flower. To which we offer, might there be a different way? And what if this weed abatement was actually like a citizen-led, like gas-free social community event. So this coming year, we've actually got a bunch of scythes, and we're amassing volunteers, and we're calling it Sunday scything. So on Sundays, like meet with people and then actually do the weed abatement ourselves. So because our city government is doing a terrible job and just perpetuating the ecological brokenness of all of this, might it be necessary for we as citizens and neighbors and people who care to softly intervene and come in and help the situation get better. There's Danny. Also, it's pretty. That's cool. This is the Rainbow River. This was a stand of Clarkia that Jenny and Danny kind of installed. And now we're actually also experimenting with fire. There was a fire in the park. Our latest test plot is called Burn Scar. And it seems devastatingly relevant and topical given just what happened. But fire is a natural phenomenon in California, and we've urbanized our way into wildlife fire zones. And so that's a whole other lecture. That's an extremely complex thing, but we're trying to figure out how we intervene after fires. Land and labor. This is Michelle Franco's life's work, but I'll kind of explain our stance on labor and part of the reason we're so excited to be doing the Glimcher with y'all. But our labor activism almost emerged from a much more innocent place, which is that I take pictures. I always have a camera with me. It's kind of one of the ways that I communicate and understand the world. Alan and I, and now Jenny and Story and our whole team, had always found construction to be very beautiful, and it was curious to me that wasn't shared or that wasn't captured, or that I would go to projects of designers that I admired, and I would just see the finished thing looking perfect. So we just started taking pictures of everything, and in the early days, before we had a website, my friend Adam, who's like a good branding dude, I said, what should we do for our website? And he said, you should just make a confusing website that doesn't make any sense. So we had this confusing website that didn't make any sense, and we would just put pictures of process on it. As years went by and as we began to think about it more, it kind of took a slightly more political stance to us, insofar as it seems wrong that the contribution of the laborer is erased in the mainstream of like landscape architectural publishing and media and that sort of a thing. Depending on how you look at that, that's kind of passive systemic racism or classism. That's not good. So, you like this, Michelle? Quoted you. So for designers concerned with social and spatial justices, it is necessary to expand the context of landscape work beyond a site's physical and historic narratives to include the context and conditions of the people laboring at the site itself. So it has become, we now within our office have a working group called Land and Labor. This is one of these things where we can't snap our fingers and wholly change the industry worldwide. So all we're doing now is kind of raising our hand and pointing this out, and that it seems not great, and trying to do better by our crews. So what we're doing is we're going around and telling everybody and pointing out an elephant in the room that seems like not right. So we've published, Rebecca Greenwald, who works with us sometimes, published an article with us in Metropolis magazine, and they've been in other ventures elsewhere. So it's an ongoing, we haven't figured out exactly what we need or what this will become, but it's like a journey that we're going on, and we're excited to explore it more deeply with y'all at Pizzuti and Glimcher and think about an ethical way of working. This critical lens towards labor we also apply toward ourselves. We would be hypocrites or jerks if we weren't as equally critical to the way and methods of working in our office ourselves. So a few things we do. We have a 40% profit sharing program within our office that's distributed at quarterly intervals. So that feels, we started with 20, we've now bumped it up to 40. At quarterly intervals, we have a system where our lovely accountant, Zach, figures out the hours that people worked, and then based on that, everyone gets a chunk of the profit. We pay hourly. The salary model, though I guess sometimes required, I don't know. The salary model is more prone to exploitative practices. Early in the days of the office, Alan and I just kind of decided that we should pay people hourly. That way, if they worked overtime, they get time and a half, it's less painful. And then what's in turn has happened is it requires us to be more kind of thoughtful business managers. And in doing so, people really only generally work 40 hours a week. Full benefits, a soft hierarchy. It's impossible to not have some sort of a hierarchy, but what we do and the way we structure the office is that almost everyone is kind of their own project designer and project manager. The boss is, for lack of a better term, kind of, we curate and we make sure that things are moving in good direction, but by doing this, then whether a project is good or not, it kind of comes down on the designer. Then they have skin in the game, but we also give them agency, and the project is very much an expression of them. What that's also interestingly done is it's allowed us to become like without a particular style, because everyone in the office has their own particular style, and so it's this very interesting kind of loop that circles around. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. And I'd like to, how am I on time? Oh, I'm fast. Wait, no, I'm not fast. I did that totally wrong. I'm okay on time? 10 minutes? Okay. I'd like to talk about beauty. Recent historical methods and ways of building gardens and landscapes mostly impose or require beauty of the garden. This is not a TERREMOTO project. It's kind of cool, but anyways, I use it because it seems that recent historical modes and methods of making gardens impose legible geometry on a garden. Oh no, hold on. As a way of perhaps controlling nature and or expressing the aesthetic proclivities of a culture or a society or a place. But the more I think about it, the more I feel that this is not a healthy relationship with nature. We need new metrics, we need new ways of working, and beauty, and what if beauty was an emergent property of a garden rather than an imposed property? What if through being thoughtful and gentle to land, through using materials that are locally and ethically sourced, through building landscapes that are built by people who are treated well and make living wages, what if we use mostly native plants? What if we do all that and then beauty emerges rather than imposes itself on the garden? This is the 7th Avenue Garden. This is a project that's a collaboration with a friend named David Horowitz. His studio is just kind of off that, the page over there. He is an artist and a friend, and he came to us and said, I got permission from the owner of this land to build a garden on his land with the understanding that one day it might go away. Should we do this? And we said, hell yes, let's do this. So what began was like an interesting meandering journey in an alternative way of working. We never drew a plan for this project. Sorry, Glimcher people, this is maybe slightly redundant to what I said in our class yesterday, but drawing and plan quietly implies human dominion over land. We don't want to make gardens or landscapes that dominate land anymore. So might plans serve us poorly? I say this acknowledging that plans also have their utility. I acknowledge this. Planting counts, material counts, all those sorts of things. But in this particular project, we had an opportunity to not fall into the conventional ways of working. And our thought is that if we want to build gardens for the next world, then might the tools of this world serve us poorly in that effort. So instead, kind of like ideograms, thinking about how it might expand. This is as kind of close to a plan as we got, kind of like drawing sloppily on an image, thinking of what it could become and be. But mostly designing it with David on the ground, boots on the ground, on the site itself, together. This is a team day. This is kind of shortly after we installed it. The plants are small, as you can see. The soil is still ongoingly tough. It's deeply urban soil that's kind of empty of much ecological or mycorrhizal health, that we have nursed it back to health. I should also say that David is a scavenger. David Horowitz is a scavenger, and this garden is mostly made of trash that he's scavenged from across the city. And then what has come is a space that is wild and messy and chaotic, but is of ecological value to birds and insects. David has an interesting penchant for crows, and so crows are very much alive and a part of this project as well. And what's become of it is we try to make it as useful and open to everyone. There is a gate, but we basically give the gate code out to everybody. And it's become this interesting amalgamation of a gallery and an event space, as well as a gathering space for all sorts of things. This is Martine Sims. She's an artist, and she did a poetry reading at the space. It's clearly very ad hoc and inexpensive, but it's given aliveness almost by the fact that it is so open and useful to many, and David is constantly programming. Don't you love this hippie dude with his hands in a giant hole that they somehow lit a fire in? It was I had no idea what was going on that day. And so yeah. And I'll end the lecture kind of talking about representation. In trying to build gardens that offer a different version of the world or culture or life, we're also exploring new ways of kind of thinking about things. Casey did this beautiful time chart that kind of considers all things. It considers when mudslides happen, when our client is gone, coyote mating season, when the ceanothus is flowering, when there's ticks, all these sorts of things. So like we're trying to ingest as much as we can with the hopes that it will then allow our our designs to become reactive and responsive to the totality of land, rather than just our client needs. Can we balance the health needs of the family with the health needs of the ecosystem? Thinking about how animals, this is the most incredible thing. This California gnatcatcher cleans their feathers through using water collected on leaves by rain and coastal fog. So in this particular project, these are the Verdugo Mountains, which is a little miniature mountain range like within Los Angeles. We're doing a garden at the base of that hill. So essentially, we've gone hiking and we have studied what's going on ecologically so that what's happening in the native zones can come down into this person's house. Can we make space for decay and decomposition in the garden? Actually, I'm not going to jump back because I'm scared of the mouse, but in the 7th Avenue garden, we've never actually let any green waste refuse leave that site. So instead, there's this giant pile that, depending on the day, is either huge or then it kind of decays. And so at the bottom of this compost pile is new soil that we use when we plant, but I think that's an interesting thing. And might we consider making gardens and landscapes that, if we're really materially closing loops, we shouldn't be sending organic matter away to some unknown facility, and instead let's leave it in the garden. Might we make gardens for all life forms and forms of living? This is a project that we started by explaining to the client our principles that we would like to use recycled and low-cost materials that are locally sourced. No irrigation system, that's a longer conversation, but in Southern California, we're realizing that irrigation systems often kind of indulge thoughtless garden making. And so through not installing an irrigation system, what we end up with is a homeowner or a land steward who is emotionally and or spiritually more in sync with their garden, and they understand its ebbs and flows. The tenants being a part of ongoing stewardship and care. The outsourcing of everything feels increasingly problematic and thoughtless to us. Making space for wildlife, making a garden that's 100% permeable. Increasingly, we keep concrete and or impermeable surfaces to an absolute minimum in our projects. Of course, people need to get to their homes safely and things like this, but it seems very unkind to deprive land, of its sentient right to have water touch it. And so I will end by saying the beauty is in the aliveness, it's in the kindness, and it's in our active engagement for the betterment of land and each other. Thank you.
We have a few minutes for questions. If anybody has a question, please feel free. And you have to project so David can hear you.
Yell at me.
How would you describe your guys' leadership style of the organization, specifically when dealing with clients? I'm curious how you would describe that process. You always try to be gentle with the land and yeah, just looking at that.
You said our leadership or communication style as it relates to clients?
Yeah.
It's a good question. So I guess as a start, we try to be nice and kind to our clients, even though they drive us crazy, but we love them. So I guess one way of answering this question is all of this like stuff that I just dumped on you, thank you for listening. Some people come to us and reach out to us because they want all of that. They want like the philosophy, and they want to know about all of that, and then we very much take them along for the journey. Some clients just find us in a magazine or on a website and just want a pretty thing. We don't necessarily need to burden them with the fact that we believe in climate change and we're labor activists and all this stuff. So we're careful not to just like overwhelm our clients with like too much stuff. Like we're fine to hold that inside of ourselves internally. And some clients do want to go for that journey and go for the whole thing. One of my favorite clients, Jeremy Steenblick, he's like, just give it all to me. And so we just like throw everything at him. But then other clients we don't. So it just depends on the project. And I should also say that all projects are different. We have these aspirations and we have like these goals, whether they be ecological or material or labor activism, but we can't necessarily require all projects to be all things. So it's more that when we come to a site and we understand our clients' needs, we do our best within the parameters that we have to make it a radical garden of love and interconnectedness, but knowing that like no project will be all of that. So it's kind of like figuring out, always pushing, but then also being cognizant of like where we acquiesce. Oh, sorry, yeah.
Hi, David. Thank you so much for the lecture. I had a little bit of a question on your guys' soft hierarchy and like how that's developed over like the 10 plus years that you guys have had as a practice, especially in an industry that's like so hierarchical.
It developed. I have had in my life good jobs and I have had bad jobs. And I'm thankful for both. I think Alan and I kind of intuitively, when we started TERREMOTO, simply like saw the things that didn't make good sense to us in terms of business with longevity, and so we just didn't do those things. Also, though, like a lack of hierarchy gets complicated when we have new people who are right out of school who actually like need leadership and we need to cultivate them as like landscape architects. So, and I'm not against like one person telling another person what to do as long as the terms are understood. It's complicated. We navigate it with kindness. I should also say that it works because our office is only of a certain scale. I would be remiss, or I would be lying to you to say that this model of working would work at an office of 60 people. We're struggling with this now, like in a very open-hearted way, as we get older together and as we don't really have much turnover, perhaps because of this nice way of working. How we get old together, and is everyone okay to do their own production for forever? You know what I mean? These are like very real like questions. So we just talk about it a lot and figure it out, and it is a reason why we're trying not to quantitatively grow. We're trying to like qualitatively evolve and improve, but not actually get bigger, because that might disrupt this soft hierarchy and way of working. Because the bigger an office gets, kind of the more structure it needs. Anyone? Yeah.
So your 4 tenants of a garden, kind of, I noticed that like animals were part of that. Is that more of an emergent property that reveals itself later, or is that something you've been planning for? Wildlife utility?
Yeah, I would say it's present in all of our projects. Yeah, it's an interesting question. It could be on that list of things for sure, but I almost feel like through planting mostly native plants as a start, through oftentimes almost requiring our clients to have water sources in a garden. That's like in Southern California at least, that's like the first accelerant to get animals like on your property. So through those kind of means and methods, we prioritize wildlife, but I guess, yeah, I don't know, maybe it's just a clerical thing that it's not on that list. So. Yes, hi.
I'd love to hear more about the kind of full spectrum of the labor acknowledgement part of the work, because it's really great to say, hey, had photographs of people building our work, and we take part in building some of the work, and I think that's a really nice model. I'm also just curious about, we saw a particular range of and type of projects, right?
Sure.
What does that look like through maybe a broader spectrum of the practice?
Things that we aspire to do or to get to, which we're working with Michelle on, for example, let's say construction documents are 60% done, might we actually ask and invite the builders in for their builderly input so that the construction documents are a shared, or created collectively? That's one thing we're thinking about. And then also, another thing is that oftentimes we will ask builders, how would you do it? If they have a different point of view, so kind of being receptive and open. At the end of the day, when a thing needs to get done, to my earlier point, it's okay for one person to tell another person to do a thing as long as the terms are understood and I think there's mutual respect. And then I guess I would add, lastly, like the gardener or the person who ends up ongoingly taking care of the garden, bringing them in to a project before it's finished. We've made mistakes putting plants that have different water requirements close to them. That's a thing that we've actually tinkered with and done a few times, but we almost need to more thoughtfully like streamline into our work. It's funny because there's like AutoCAD, and then there's like our labor thing. So we're also tinkering with how like in our CAD backgrounds, like these more like ecological activism or social activism are in our CAD's backgrounds. So we're merging technical things with like philosophical things. So that's kind of a rambling non-answer, but.
Ask rambling non-question.
I have a question.
Please.
Maybe to build upon that, about labor, do you have a certain scale of project that you feel like y'all are most comfortable working in order to be able to tend to some of that mindful way of working through projects? Like, I'm sure you think about that a lot. And also, what's the largest, maybe I missed it, I apologize, what's the largest scale project you worked on? And was that maybe more challenging to apply mindfulness throughout?
We don't have we like small projects and we like big projects, and we like a diversity of project scale in the office because it's good for our muscles to like try different things. So I guess there's no like particular scale. I would say we probably work with between 5 and 8 landscape construction crews, with whom at this point we've developed really intimate is too romantic. We've developed really a way of working with them that seems to be working really well. And almost back to your point, what's lovely about that is now once we've built 10 projects or whatever with Carmen or whomever, then they can kind of read our minds, and we kind of have an intuitive way of working together and know how that kind of rolls. That's awesome because it saves us time. We also bill our clients hourly, so it makes us like effective in like very like targeted locations. And actually going back to you, when we started our land and labor initiative also, we called a lot of these contractors in and had not painful, but had like slightly awkward conversations, like how much do you pay your guys? And we didn't like fire any of them. We already worked with them, but when we found out if they were paying their guys too low, then we would be like, well, how can we like actually help with that? Do we need to charge our clients more? This guy needs to make more than 18 bucks an hour. So it's a conversation that's like ongoing. Again, we can't like snap our fingers and be like, it's all perfect, so it's kind of. Please.
Just in your response there, you said maybe we need to charge our clients more. Does the contracting money flow through you all?
No.
Is that too-
Yeah, our clients are the construction. The construction contracts are separate from us. Yeah. Yes.
Could you give a word or two of advice to our students who want to start firms eventually and maybe proceed in kind of altered ways from traditional landscape practice?
Sorry, this is annoying. I apologize. I just wanted a pretty picture. What I would say, did everybody hear that question? Kind of? Okay. What would I say, Michelle? I would say you're going to need to get some experience. Go do your best to find a firm that, at least in part, their way of working or philosophy aligns with you, and get some experience. And then don't be scared to start your own thing, and email me if you need any help in doing that. To me, like the most beautiful version of future landscape architecture would be awesome small firms dispersed across the United States or the world, doing work locally, doing work that improves the ecological and social well-being of their communities in which they work. I would also say that landscape architecture, there are bad things about it, but it's easy to, not easy. Starting a business cost $4,000. My dad was kind enough to help me with that. We got 2 computers and a printer that could print 11 by 17. And that's how we started the business. So that leap, don't let that be the thing that scares you, I guess would be my, yeah. Go for it. Yeah, you need to get some experience, but again, we need local firms scattered everywhere doing good work. That's like, to me, that would be if TERREMOTO were to, in part, help that happen, that would be a beautiful legacy.
Any last questions before we wrap up?
Thank you.